Hello and welcome to Adventures in Venueland, an EVMC podcast. Join us for this all-access pass backstage and behind the scenes with some of the brightest minds that cross the scope of the live event industry. I'm Dave Rettelberger.
And I'm Paul Hooper. We'll introduce you to incredible guests who journey with us as we dive deep into the world of venues, tours, festivals, and everything in between. Grab your laminate and meet us in Venueland.
For the first time in Adventures in Venueland history, we're heading out to Connecticut, Somers, Connecticut to be exact, and very excited to talk with a woman Paul and I have both known for a few years, but excited to hear about what she has going on in her current role with Oakview Group, where she is a vice president of marketing. Please welcome Marissa Dionne. How you doing?
Hey guys, how are we?
Good.
We're doing good. Summertime here and everywhere, and enjoying it. But I know you're a busy woman, so tell us a little bit about your role, because you're kind of on the 360 side. But I imagine there's people listening who have no idea what that means. So tell us a little bit about your role and what you do for Oakview Group.
Yeah, so I think if you opened LinkedIn or any industry publication lately, you've probably noticed the rapid growth of OVG and all of the places we seem to be jumping into, which is fantastic. But in my space with Oakview Group, one of our divisions is called 360, and that's where we have our venue management. We have our OVG hospitality. We have our alliances, the Theater Alliance, the Arena Alliance. We have parking. We have our sustainability arm under that. So under that space, we have a lot of moving pieces. My actual main focus is overseeing the marketing and supporting the venues out that we either manage, we own and operate, and then we've recently jumped into marketing for our hospitality, are two of our areas of focus. And then with that marketing arm, one area we've really jumped into the last 2 years is in the convention center space. You know, we've had a real strategic focus on trying to grow the OVG name in the convention center industry. So depending upon the day, we're wearing multiple hats, depending upon what the focus is of the day, you know, that's kind of where we lean. But, you know, it's kind of the same thing as being in an arena, right? Your one day is never the same as the next. And I think that's why we all love what we do and continue to do it for years and years. So
That's a lot of venues though, right? I don't know how many, if you have a count of how many are under 360, but
yeah.
Is that, you know, I'm sure that's a lot to keep on track of. How do you kind of keep everyone on the same page? Is it leaning on a lot of like regional people and sort of just trying to disseminate that information down and sort of, you know, sharing as much as you can and sort of communicating a lot, but it seems like it would be a lot to kind of keep on top of everything.
Yeah. So in our venue management side, we have over 240 venues that we oversee in some sort of capacity. And then you add in our hospitality side, we're pushing right around 500 venues.
So yeah.
Wow.
500.
It's a lot. It's a lot. I'm not going to lie. And, you know, I am fortunate. I have a really great team that support and help make sure we're moving in the right direction. Recently was able to hire 2 full-time people that report directly to me. So Michelle oversees our convention center strategy that I mentioned. And then Jess, who has dove deep into our hospitality side, is doing a fantastic job of trying to support the 300 venues that don't have a marketing arm. So it's a lot, but you know, I'm very fortunate there. And then on the venue management side, when it comes to the marketing team, I have a regional structure where I have 6 individuals. We're broken up into 6 regions. We have our Canadian region, and then we have 5 arena regions that are broken up by size and scope. And with each of those, I have awesome team members that support probably about 15 to 16 of our venues at a time. And so without them, we would not be successful. I mean, they are my guiding post when it comes to decision making and helping to make sure we're moving in the right direction. They're helping to communicate the successes coming out of the venues, right? Like we want to celebrate what our venues are doing. So they're really there to help make sure we're doing all of that, providing best practices, making sure everyone has the tools and resources to be successful at their job. So whereas we are a very big team, we're lean, but we are mighty, and we do what we can to get what we need to get done to make sure everyone's successful in their venues.
It's as Paul mentioned, a lot to keep track of. So for those of us who are maybe I don't want to say kind of maybe we're independent, right? Maybe we're out there on our own, and I can't even envision what your role is as far as how you're working with the venues, and so kind of walk us through. Let's get a little bit of the dirt of it. Like what
Yeah.
are you actually doing in your role? And I mean that with all the respect in the world.
No, it's a fair question. I think, it depends on the day, right? Like, but ultimately the goal is to, I mean, our job is to get butts and seats, right? We want to increase
Amen.
revenue.
Sure.
How do we keep doing that and successfully? So, just to like us take one bit of it, let's just say we're rolling out a nation tour, right? Like, so we want to make sure that all of our marketers have all the assets and resources they need to be successful in launching that tour. Well, and I think the other side of that is we realize it's not just about selling the seats, it's about selling an experience and a destination and that whole experience from soup to nuts. And so, one of the things we try to do is have those conversations like, all right, we have, let's just say, Billie Eilish coming in. What is she like? What doesn't she like? What are her fans like? How can we collectively as a group talk through fan activations and get the fans engaged? How do we share those resources and those insights? Because as you know, many of our venues are very lean teams. We're not working with
Yeah.
6 or 7. Like that's for the bigger venues, right? Like our owned and operated have those good, robust teams. But even then, there's so many events out there. It's like, how do we share resources to make everyone successful? And that's where we have these calls, and I'm connecting with the promoters and making sure we have all of our ducks in a row so that when we do have these calls, our teams can be as successful as possible in rolling out these fan activations and these crazy back of house experience for artists. And then part of that also comes with like fielding questions and issues and concerns. So it's really like making sure then we look at once the show's launched, how are sales doing? Are we trending well? Are we not trending well? So I do a lot of like high level looking at how are ticket sales? What are we hearing out there? What seems to be working? What's not working? And we just really try to communicate that to the field so they're on top of what we're seeing and they're not really walking out there blindly like, am I the only one experiencing this? So it is great. We do tout that we have like this one department mentality that if you're sitting in Baltimore, you can pick up the phone and call someone in Denver, or you can call someone in Texas, or we really try to make it as a tight knit community as possible so they can feel like they can ask those questions to someone. They're not just kind of flying blind out there by themselves.
It does feel like to maybe more so 10 to 15 years ago or something, you would have this discrepancy of some venues had more resources or maybe more creativity and others really were kind of lost out there. And then there really was this gap between them, right? On who was leading the pack and who was really dragging far behind. And so it does seem like, there's the idea is to kind of level that playing field a little bit more, or have that rising tide to where you're not going to have anyone that's lagging that far behind, and you still probably will have these leaders, but ideally you're going to kind of like have this base expectation of here's the level of hospitality we're going to have at every single one of our venues, and here's what that artist welcome is going to look like across the board. And maybe some cities it's going to be a lot higher, but other ones, like, we know we're going to at least hit like a certain minimum across all the properties.
Yeah, we have those conversations a lot. We actually hosted meetings right and around EVMCs this year where we walked through this creative brainstorming exercise. And we're like, look, like we know Moody Center's doing it well, right? They have a great budget. BOK Center's doing it well. CFG Bank, Acrisure, like all of these bigger venues are doing it really well because they have a brand manager focus on it. They have the budget to support it. They
Sure.
have the GM buy-in to do all of it. But then you roll down to some of these other venues that want to do it, but know like we don't have the budget to do that. We don't have like we're
Sure.
not the shiny new toy, but it's so we walk through this exercise of like if you had $200 to do it an on sale or to do a back of house activation, let's brainstorm what that would look like. So, whereas the biggest thing I always keep telling my team is don't worry about what other people are doing. You worry about your venue, your city. You be authentic to you and what you and your community is. You can take bits and pieces of what these venues are doing, but then how do you make it your own? How do you put your own spin on it? How do you make it, Lexington, Kentucky? How do you make it Des Moines, Iowa? How do you make it Savannah, Georgia? Like it's
Sure.
those things that we keep trying to educate. And it gets you can tell some of them are like, well, I don't have that kind of stuff. I'm like, don't worry about that. Like what is good for you?
Yeah.
What is good for your community? What do your fans respond to? What is it great about your destination that you can highlight and bring into the back of house for artists? So that's what we really try to focus on. And when we're sharing those ideas and giving the success stories of like, hey, this is how the show went off here. Now, how do you translate it to your venue and to your market?
Yeah, I just, when you're working with all these buildings and everybody's got an idea, right? Everybody's got, ideas because obviously we work with a lot of great people. But how do you manage them competing with each other versus, helping each other build? Because obviously,
Right. Sure.
those sometimes come into conflict.
They do. And I think, one of the things they have to realize is, and sometimes in our calls, we talk about the genre, right? Like, I mean, if we had a show call for every country artist we're hosting, that's all we would do is be sitting on the phone talking about that specific artist. So then we try to make it more general. Like we have country artists coming in. So this is what we did for, Cody Johnson. This is what we did for Luke Bryan. This is what we did for, Zach Brown and or Zach Bryan and all of those things. So it's like, so then we take the bits and pieces. And to that point, I just kind of reiterate, like, what did you like that they did? What do you think would resonate with you? And then make it your own. And, I think it's about them really tapping into the creativity and into the team. And we try not to make it a competition. And I know like some venues are definitely at the level like
Oh,
when
they
I'm
definitely
doing.
are, right?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. They like
But
to
that's
share
good
it.
sometimes, right? Like you
It
kind of want
is.
people to
Sometimes,
have that
sometimes.
drive, right? I
Yeah.
mean, sometimes it's unrealistic in that, like to your point, you don't want to have someone be defeated because they're like, I can't do what Moody Center's doing. You have to set realistic expectations for your market and your budget and your team and like just the, bandwidth you have. But I think there is some fun with like, getting people into that sort of like competition thing because it can
Yeah.
sometimes drive and push people to be a little more creative because they're like, I gotta outthink this other city, I
Yeah.
gotta, I'm early on the tour. I gotta try to, think of a really creative artist gift that, we're gonna be the only ones to do. And, sometimes it's a good thing.
Yeah. So what I mean, even as simple as Des Moines, Iowa they had Thomas Rhett kicked off his tour there. So they reached out to his manager. His kids like wrote him, like created these cool big posters, says good luck dad, did all these drawings. We had them framed and put in by his green room. So when he walked out, he saw him. He's like, oh my God. And like he shared it on his socials and stuff. And it's like, again, it goes back to it can be the simplest idea of doing something. You still get, you can still get the social support, right? Like anytime you can get it on,
Right.
anytime the artist will share it, you're like, oh my God, that's where you really are excited about it.
Yeah.
A lot of times, like the artists don't really know, like if they saw, a specialty cake at one venue, they probably know they're going to get another specialty cake somewhere else, but they don't
Right.
know if people have been like connecting to talk about it, right? Like, so it
Right.
just, so it is, it's trying to make sure we want to challenge people, right? We're all competitive. I think it's that marketing nature in us. We want to be the best. We want to, but it's definitely a balance with some of them. But some of them are just, some of them will give you the creative idea and be like, hey, I don't have this artist, but I love them. And here's a great idea for you to take and run with. So it's just
Sure.
that community sharing that we really just try to instill in everybody.
You've been in this business long enough that I'm sure you've heard some really bad ideas. I'm not looking for you to call anybody out, but do you have like executive veto power, or is the power belong to the states?
Usually, I mean, I pretty much wear my emotions on my sleeve. So if I like something or if I don't like something. So, I don't necessarily have veto power, but I do, occasionally can put on that corporate hat to be like, let's talk through this to see if this
Right.
really is the best approach in which we want like to
Is there
deliver.
a
Like,
way
so
we can rework that,
yeah,
perhaps?
so let's step back and what's our goal? What's
Yeah.
what's the end result? And how do we get there without like, potentially hanging someone from the ceiling and having them dangle there for a while, right? Like, so
Right.
how do we safely do these or effectively do these so they all stay on brand and we don't end up in the news for some extravagant story?
What makes a good marketing person for you in 2024?
The passion, like, so I'll interview people and they can talk the tactics, right? They're like, oh, I've done social media, I've done this. But when you sit and talk to them and you can hear that spark, right? Like it's that creative spark. It's not just the spark of wanting to work in the industry, because I think that's a whole nother layer to being successful in this industry is like you have to be passionate about this industry because we work nights and weekends, we work holidays, we work when people aren't. And like you have to get along really well with the people in your venue. So you have to love what you're doing. But when it comes to the marketing side of it, you can hear it in their voices a lot of times, that creativity or even just the want to be in that creative space and have like they have it in them, but they just might need a little bit of push to get them there or give them a little bit of a guide to be like, now you can go do this. So, one of the things about Tim Lewicki is that he comes from that entrepreneurial spirit. And the minute you talk to him, that just exudes out of him. And that just rolls down to everybody in the corporate, like whether you're corporate, you're a venue or whatever. And I feel like if you so we know what that feels like. So when you interview someone and you can see that energy in them, they're going to do well. With a little bit of guidance and support, they're going to be rock stars. So that's really where I look at. I always feel like we can teach them the skills, right? You could teach them how to buy,
Right.
you could teach them how
Sure.
to pitch media. But it's hearing that want and that creativity in them that really is what I look for.
Absolutely.
With your, touching all these different venues and talking to all these tours, are you seeing any kind of trends that you're seeing that are sort of on the horizon or things that, feel like are, around the bend that, it probably gives you a different view than other people that are down on that venue level where they're sort of just focused on here's my market, here's my venue, here's what I can do. Whereas you might be able to see sort of bigger trends, whether it's the amount of tours going out or just the types of like marketing activations and things like that. Are there any things that kind of stand out to you?
Well, I would say the biggest thing that I had seen in the past couple years is that a lot of what we were doing traditionally as marketers doesn't seem to be the main priority, right? Like at one point in time, we were doing the media buying and we were doing all that sort of stuff. And I've seen a lot of that shift, with Live Nation handling most of it, AEG handles most of it. So whereas we still are doing a little bit of media buying, I feel like we're becoming more of like having to create an entertainment destination. It's, like Acrisure has done a really great job as they took this, they made a brand behind it, right? Calling it the coolest spot in the desert. They took this outdoor compound, which is supposed to be for artists, and they converted it to a premium space. So, I think we're going to see a lot more of that happening. That again, it's not just about grabbing your hot dog and your beer and sitting down. It's how are you creating those premium experiences? How are you elevating that? I mean, I think we've all kind of seen the trend in food and beverage get elevated at arenas and stuff. You're just
Sure.
going to keep seeing that amplify. And I think it was like last or 3 weeks ago, like three venues broke ground on revamping their premium spaces because they know one, that's where the money is, but two,
Yeah.
that's where guests want to be, right? Like they want that elevated experience and it's showing they're willing to pay for it. So I think you're really just going to see more of that come through, and then I think that to your point, like the other thing that we've been seeing in the past 6 months and be interesting to see where this goes, but those big looks for the announce, right? Like the artists want these big looks. And I think where we need to be, I guess, a little bit more involved or in a part of the conversation, what do those look like? Like, we have a creative team and our creative team can come up with great ideas, but what is the timeline and all that? So I think one of my goals is to work with like the Live Nations, the AEGs of the world, to be like, hey, we want to do this, but how do we deliver it more successfully for the artist, right? Like,
Yeah.
how can we
Has to be
be
realistic too. Yeah.
right? Like, what's the time frame of it? Oh, tomorrow.
Right.
Okay, well, let's see
Tomorrow.
what we
Yeah.
can do for tomorrow. But yeah, so I think you're going to see a lot of that happening and being it more tailored for artists and fans and stuff like that. So it's just a matter of like, how are we going to continue to shift what our marketing priorities and focuses are?
When we talk about marketing a lot, we also should talk about branding, and I know that's a big piece of your job. Talking about what you do as part of branding for OVG 360.
So as I mentioned, one of our areas of focus is the convention center strategy and how are we growing our brand there. And we really come in and we sit back and we look at what our pillars are. We're about sustainability. We're about the community. We're about giving back. We're about DEI. So when we're creating activations at like industry conferences, it's like, all right, what can we do here? And so, for example, we were just in Detroit at PCMA EduCon, and what we did is we struggled with what we really want to do there and how big of a presence we want OVG to have. And we kind of leaned back on like, why don't we go from a community angle? Like, so sustainability wise, we didn't want to ship in a huge booth and set it up and spend all this money and then have to ship it back or do whatever. So we enlisted a local artist to curate a mural that he painted while the conference was going on and people kept coming in and stuff. We also had a customized Ford bench made that was in our booth. And we were just really there kind of like, talking with people. We had curated a Spotify playlist that was all derived of Detroit artists. And so we were talking about that, but really the main thing was watching this artist have his painting come to life. So after that, we then took that painting and the Ford bench and we donated it to a local organization within
Cool.
Detroit. It was called the Children's Foundation. So they came in and, like Greg Odell, who's the president of our venue management side, was there. And it was really cool just to see what they thought they were going to do, like what they're planning to doing with the painting and the bench and all that sort of stuff. So we always try when we're talking about our brand is how do we keep it authentic to OVG and amplify our brand to the caliber in which we know we want it to be, but then also be true to our pillars. So in all of those conversations, those are the things that tend to come up is like, all right, what is our charity focus? Or the community focus? Like, right, like let's be authentic to the community in which we're going in and put our OVG spin on it. And then how do we, from a sustainability lens, like how is that playing into this role? How are we making sure we're touching the community and all of those sort of things? So those really kind of lead those conversations for us when we're trying to brand OVG and what we do.
Curious, like talking about convention centers, it's very interesting because obviously people that are in any type of facilities where they've got an arena and a convention center, or a theater and a convention center, they understand there's a pretty big difference. They're venues, but you've got, with an arena, you typically will have some sort of primary tenant, and you'll also just have some sort of affinity for the building. People will go there and see multiple shows, whereas convention centers tend to be you're going because you're following an event that's coming there, not so much the center itself. Not a lot of people follow them on social media as much, because they're looking at the Comic-Con coming there. They might be looking at the garden show, but they're not so much focused on that. But it does seem to be this shift where there is more of a marketing and more of this creativity focus just in the last, recent years. And we're even seeing, obviously, at the conference with more convention center marketing people coming to the conference and wanting to be more creative. But do you think there is this kind of shift happening with convention centers sort of approaching things in a different way? Obviously, it's structured a little differently, but do you think there's changes coming there?
Yeah, I do. And I think, and I've seen in a couple different markets that we've gone into, and really the biggest organization that convention centers need to be working with if they're not is their CVB. So
Sure. Yeah.
I've always led it with, look, we're not just selling four walls. Like we're selling a destination. So when these people are coming in, the main goal of the convention center, for most of them anyways, is to be an economic driver for the city, right? You want the heads and beds, you want people eating in the restaurants, that you want to extend their stay in the market and in the region, and they're coming in for conferences and stuff. So, we always, when we go into a new venue, one of the first things we do is meet with a CVB and we align with their goals and saying, all right, how is our marketing message is going to align with your marketing message, right? Like, whereas, we're coming out of Lexington, Kentucky, we're leading with what Lexington is, but we're selling Central Bank Center, right? Like
Sure.
those are the focuses of how we try to, and we're seeing it in places, especially as the more of the industry conferences we go to, you see the CVB partnering with the venue at these events. And then we try to come in as OVG to be like another touch point, right? Like, so we have, we can come in and be like, oh, you see Miami Beach. Miami Beach is over there. They're also one of ours. So, we try to be able to connect the dots when we're out there. But yeah, I mean, you are seeing that shift of them trying to sell the destination more. And even to your point, to the arena side, that's one of the conversations we have with our marketers is like on the arena side, if you're not connected with your convention set, your CVBs, you need to go connect with them. Like, how can you help if you have a concert coming in on a Saturday night, right? Like, how do we create stay and play packages? How do we get the CVB maybe to purchase some of these tickets that then they go and sell hotel packages and restaurant packages and stuff like that. So it's like it's looking at that, increasing the revenue, being authentic to your market, and then using your partners to help you tell that story and to push it out for you. So yeah, we definitely are seeing more of a trend in the convention center space of working better together with their CVBs to sell the destination and not just their four walls.
I know another big piece of your job is as you mentioned, hospitality. What does hospitality mean to you?
Oh goodness. I mean, it's just to me, it's the overall experience, right? Like it is the service side of it. So you need to make sure that who's ever serving the cocktail or the hot dog, it may be that their service matches what they're serving, right? Like we're always coming through and trying to come up with creative drink ideas or high-end food items, and it's great. It could taste great, but if the service doesn't match what the item is, it's kind of like, all right, well, it was good, could have been great. So so to me, that's where those really go hand in hand, and you have to have both to be successful. But I would say the service really leads that hospitality focus.
I agree. And it seems to be something that people would remember more. If you've got some sort of great welcoming engagement or something, that's great. But people see that more as like icing on top, at a
Yeah.
concert maybe. But if someone treats them really bad when they're coming through the door, they're going to be like, I don't want to go back there. They won't think I don't want to go back there because there's no balloon arch, but they will say, I don't want to go back there because I went through guest services and they were kind of jerks. Whereas it can really make it too, where if you have someone who's really engaging and has this positive experience coming through the door from the get-go, I mean, that can really sell the venue way more than even the event can sometimes.
Absolutely. And I mean, from the marketing standpoint, we put all this time into getting people down there ahead of doors, right? Like we want people to come in a couple hours ahead and eat and drink, and to the point where we want to create food options for them to be like, oh my God, I have to go and get that tomahawk steak that they're now serving at this,
Right.
at in the club, or this, they make the best Manhattans. I have to go get this drink. Well, if the service they're getting is not on par or even superior, like they're gonna be like, oh, I can go get that. That hand was okay. I'll go down the street and get it somewhere else. So, I mean, those are the things to me, like we try to as a team, and we have a great hospitality division. Like the team that's leading them are just honestly bar none superior. They understand that, they instill that in their people. And so we're very fortunate that our hospitality arm is impeccable.
What trends are you seeing? Anything new and you're like, oh, this is really something that I'm catching across the board.
And the hospitality side?
Hospitality or marketing.
I would say, I think one of the conversations we had at our meeting was AI and how people are using that. And so, I'm always that very cautiously optimistic person. I'm like, all right, guys, AI is great.
Sure.
I think, if you're a one person department, it's an impeccable tool to be using. But we also have to have guardrails and make sure we're using it correctly and ethically and all of that. So we're trying to find that balance on the marketing side of making sure we can use this tool successfully, but not to the point where it's going to damage, the brand of the venue or the brand of what is out there. So that's one area we've been kind of teetering a lot on. And on the hospitality side, I would say like we're really focused on like the premium space, right? Like we're really digging into how can we create these unique opportunities for people to engage in. And for example, we do the food and beverage at Footprint Center. And there's two things that one really caught my eye. The other one I was like, oh God. So we had this huge hummock talk steak that they branded and this massive thing. I was just like, who's eating? Like, I'm like, that looks amazing. Like I wanted, and just the way they set it up just looks so delicious. The other thing that I saw, which kind of took me back, is they actually had taken a full alligator and cooked it, and then
Oh my
like
gosh.
I'll have to say, and de-skinned it, and then did this whole display around it. And when I first saw it, I was like, I had to like look close. And what is that? What like the vision that our chefs have are just amazing. And so for someone to sit there and think, I'm going to take this full alligator and cook it and then put the display around, it was mind blowing. So I think you're just going to see, I think again, gone are the days of, just a hot dog and popcorn. It's what are those amazing local flavors that are being brought into the arena that people can experience while they're watching a show.
It feels like too, just even outside the building, people, when you're going out to eat, people kind of have raised their expectations for like what a meal looks like. And they want something that's a little more culinary. So it makes sense that, when you're going to a sporting event or you're going to a concert or some sort of event, it's like they're not looking to go and just get, yeah, like the cheap hot dog. They're like, I want something that's a little elevated. I want something that's creative or maybe regional or something that, especially if they're traveling or something, it does feel like people, are just looking for that, the experience of the food, which is a part of the whole, machine.
Absolutely.
So, obviously we've talked a lot about, what's happening in the industry, but how did you get started? So I know you went to Illinois State University. Are you originally from the Illinois area, or what brought you there?
I am. I was born and raised in Illinois. I had a family member working, and I know I was one of those people that just kind of fell into this industry. I wasn't like graduated from college, I have to jump into the arena space. Like I was just like, I want to be in marketing. So I had a family member call me and say, hey, we have this internship opportunity at what and then was called the Hartford Civic Center. Are you interested? Come out, live with me for the summer and do your internship. So I did. And from there, it just, I gravitated towards like the sales side of it. So like the premium, and I was helping with sponsorship and all that. And I realized like, I like it, but I don't love it. So then I moved up to I moved over to the marketing side of it. We had all the live entertainment. We had the hockey team. We just had open Rentschler Field where we had like three awesome concerts out there. So the bug bit me, right? Like I'm like, this is amazing. I saw one of my favorite people is Billy Joel. He was at the time doing the dueling pianos with Elton John, and I got to meet him.
Oh
I'm like,
yeah.
like so. I luckily fell into it and just have really. One of the things I said to myself when I was starting out, I'm like, learn everything you can, say yes to everything you can, just so I could learn more. And I did. And so I would say, well, even now I'm still saying yes to a lot of things, but back then I was like, someone needs to learn marquee, I'll learn marquee. Someone needs to help put up dashboards, I'll put up dashboards. Like I was raising my hand to do it all. So it was definitely a fun way to roll into my career.
Those people who raise their hands like that and jump in seem like they're fewer and fewer to find these days. But when you do find them, boy, they
It's
stand out.
true.
They
Yeah.
they they definitely do. They
Yeah.
definitely do.
So, obviously you spent some time, Madison Square Garden, Connecticut?
It was a division of MSG. They had managed the arena. They had the hockey team that was theirs. And then UConn was building the football stadium, which is Rentschler Field or Pratt and Whitney Stadium now, and they asked us to manage it. So we created our own like little MSGCT brand with the three properties that we were overseeing.
MSGCT, I like that.
Yeah, yeah. That was the brainchild of my mentor, one of my favorite people in the world, Joe Flanagan. I learned under him, and that's, just his brain is like no other brain I've ever been a part of being in the same room with. Extremely creative, but he was the one that kind of came up with that whole MSGCT thing and just really helped carry the brand and my career, quite honestly. So.
And from there, you talked about the change there from going from there to Mass Mutual Center.
So thanks to Joe Flanagan, who had moved from Hartford, he went up to Springfield. They needed a new director of marketing, so he brought me along. And that's where like I really had to take the shift. I was an arena girl, right? Like this, I'm still true to the core an arena girl. But I had to wear and learn convention centers. And, Paul, you kind of mentioned this before, like it is different, like how they refer
Yeah.
to things. Like we call it booking. Well, my director of sales did not like when I called, oh, did you book that event? I didn't book that event. I sold that event. So we had to like shift language to make
It's
sure
true though. I
we were
know.
speaking the right things. But ultimately, it's just a little bit of
It's
a
a sales
different.
manager, not a booking manager.
Correct, correct, correct. So, it's just, I had to learn the nuances of working in the convention center space and stuff, but it also opened up that creativity. Like we had conferences coming in, conventions coming in, and this is where like we were doing fan activation experiences way before we started doing it in the arena space. So, I was at the Mass Mutual Center, and then from there, at the time was Global Spectrum that was managing it. And I rolled into an arena or a regional role to where I was overseeing and supporting 10 arenas in the Northeast. I then had folded in the convention center side of it. So I was overseeing our convention center team and, about 10 arenas in a regional space. And from there, like you get not thrown in, I shouldn't say that, but you get brought in and looped into like business development. So now we're out pitching. I did several pitches for several of the venues that are still under our umbrella, and so then that got you out of just your region, right? Out of just your venue. You got to see other venues. You got to experience what needed to be brought to them, and how they operate and how we can help better operate them. So I spent about, 7 years with Global Spectrum. Did a brief hiatus out of the industry after I had my first son. And then two of my old colleagues that had broke away from Global Spectrum called me and said, hey, we really would love your help. We're growing. They had started their own venue management company, and they're like, we're growing and really would love for you to come lead the charge there. So I jumped ship and went with them. And it's been, I think, we were moving as our small little group for probably about a year and a half. And then Oakview came knocking on their door and said, hey, we want to grow in the facility side of things. So they acquired the company that we were with, and we just started growing OVG facilities. And it's been quite the roller coaster. I mean, it's just like, it's been fantastic to watch the growth of Tim's vision and Francesca's vision and all of that. And like when, so I had moved away essentially from Global Spectrum. And then when we acquired what was then Spectra, formerly Global Spectrum,
Right.
it was like the whole family came back together again. So like all these people that I grew up with in the industry, we're all one big happy team again. So it's been fun. It's been fun.
So do you get to mostly work from home these days? Are you traveling to the venues? What's your schedule like?
Both. I have two younger kids. I have a 7-year-old and a 9-year-old. So I try to balance that as best as possible. So I probably travel 2 to 3 times a month to the different venues, or like if we're doing industry conferences, or if we're, going after new pieces of business. So, that's where I tend to go. And then I get to work from my home office the majority of the time. So it's a good little balance. I mean, again, like I am very fortunate to have the role that I have with Global or with OVG, and watching the growth and being a part of the growth. And so it's been really cool. It's been really cool.
You mentioned the kids. I see the picture of the dog behind you. Tell us about who's there in the house with you.
So, well, right now I have the neighbor, one of the neighbors is over. So my two sons and the neighbors are running outside like maniacs right now because it's summer and it's beautiful. But yeah, I have two little boys that are 7 and 9. And then my husband, who he too has, was in the industry, and that's where we had met. So he's here. Unfortunately, my dog, she passed away about a year ago. So I think we have a big vacation coming. So after vacation, I think we're gonna get another fur baby because it's just not the same without them.
Are you going to do a puppy or try to get something a little older?
My sons want a puppy, but
But you
I
know how
also
much work
know
that is.
for mom and dad,
Yeah.
right?
Someone
And
who
that's what I
just
tell them, like
raised a puppy, I would be like, I would take a 1-year-old, I think, next time. Just
yeah,
enough to where they're potty trained and slightly less chewy on the furniture and the arms.
that's what I'm afraid of is that, we just got redone doing our living room and got new furniture. And I'm like, and now we're going to get a puppy. And what is that puppy going to do to this living room? So if they have their way, it's going to be a puppy. But I think, our last dog, Dublin, she chose us, right? Like I walked in and she came over and she sat on my foot and I melted. I'm like, oh, she's ours. So hopefully the next dog that we welcome to our home will pick us. So
Very
Sweet.
nice. Oh, that's great.
yeah.
Well, hey, I know you're very busy, and we're gonna wrap things up here. Before we do, though, I want to hit you with our fast five. It's just 5 questions, looking for your short, instant response. Do you remember your very first concert?
I do. It was Boys to Men way back in the 90s.
What venue? What venue?
It was the venue in Iowa. I'm trying to remember what the name of it. It was in Davenport, Iowa. I'm trying to remember what the name of it was then. God, it was a while ago. Naming rights all come and
Yeah,
go.
sure, right.
Wait,
Everything gets a little cloudy.
yeah,
Do you have a favorite concert?
My favorite concert. I have a few. So I was fortunate, and so this is where it's not really fair. I was fortunate to watch the opening of U2 at the Sphere,
Oh,
and
nice.
that was like no other concert I've seen. Like it was amazing. But I would have to say my other one outside of that was when we opened Climate Pledge Arena, Foo Fighters. That
Sure.
was just awesome.
Yeah,
What's
yeah.
your favorite thing to do on a day off?
Well, lately I've been forced to watch a lot of youth baseball with the boys, but ultimately it's family time. Like we let them pick what they want to go do, and we go out as a family, whether we go, exploring or out to eat or bowling or whatever it is. But it's about the family at this point.
What do you love most about Connecticut?
The seasons, fall more specifically. Like give me a good sweatshirt, give me like a warm like Cabernet and a fire, and I am a happy girl. All could be falling around me, but that would my happy spot.
Last question. What's your theme song? There's a reality TV show. Cameras follow you all around throughout your life. What's the song that plays over the opening credits of the Marissa show?
So there is a song that ever since I was in my mid 20s, like regardless of if it was, and it seems to be more of a song I listen to when like things are crazy and I just need a moment to realize like it will pass, but it's In the Middle with Jim Eats World. For some reason, when I listen to that song, it just, we'll get through. We'll get through. So whether it's a hectic mommy moment, a hectic work moment, or other personal things happening, that always seems to kind of resonate in my head.
That's awesome. Anything you want to plug here? If somebody wants to reach out to you, or any plugs you want to throw out at all?
I mean, if you want to keep up to date with what's happening at Oakview Group, I mean, our LinkedIn page,
Good
our
luck.
Instagram page.
It's, you guys
That's
stay
a lot.
the moving target.
There's
I
times
feel
I'm
like
wait, what are we doing? Oh, okay,
I
great.
feel like OVG sometimes is like that meme from It's Always Sunny where Charlie Day, with all the threads connected, and it's like, okay, we've got arenas over here. You guys stay busy.
We definitely do stay busy, which is great. But I would say follow us on our Instagram and our LinkedIn pages, and then if you want to follow me on Instagram, I mean, sometimes you get a kid post, sometimes you get some travel posts. But yeah, no, thank you guys for inviting me and asking me to do this. This has been fun catching up with you guys.
Really enjoyed getting to know you a little better and hearing about your adventures. I appreciate the time very much today.
Thank you guys. Have a good summer. We'll see you soon.
Yes, plenty of summer still left.
Yes.
Hey, a big thanks to everybody for listening to this episode of Adventures in Venueland. Remember, you can subscribe and find more episodes wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. If you get a chance, leave us one of those 5-star reviews. It does help others find us. Until the next adventure, I'm Dave Rettelberger.
And I'm Paul Hooper. Thanks for listening, everyone. We'll catch you on the next one. Adventures in Venueland is a side project of the Event and Venue Marketing Conference, a marketing conference that brings together diversified event and venue professionals to cultivate education, collaboration, and innovation for the growing sports and live entertainment industry. Find out more at eventvenuemarketing.com.
Audio editing and mixing by Camille Faulkner. Design and digital advertising by Megan Ebeck.
Copywriting and publicity by Samantha Marker.
Guest booking and brand strategies by Paul Hooper.
Guest research by Dave Rettelberger.
Marketing strategies by Paul Hooper, Megan Ebeck, and Samantha Marker. Thanks for joining us. Until the next adventure.